22. Like, that's absolute golfers.
No, that's weird. That's what they used to play at work. Conditions take on. 18s. So I don't think it reaches 18. This one I said that. Anyway, sorry.
All right. Yeah. So anyway, we talked about this last time. I don't want to repeat it too much, but then we talked about how the philosophers reject this belief, and the way they answer it is through that objection that we discussed previously, where they basically went through the whole thesis that there's no free will in reality. It's out of our control. And then the actions that we perform are due to allatul ilal, like going up the chain. And ultimately, everything belongs to God. Everything is God's action. So the source of evils becomes God himself. So that's the philosophical notion to reject dualism. So they say we are believers in Tawheed, we believe in one God, so we can't accept this approach. So we have to say, no, there's only one origin, and all good and all evil originates from God. But anyway, now, obviously, when someone says evil originated from God, some questions come about where you say, well, how can God originate evil when he's a source of goodness, when he's merciful, etc., etc. So this is where the word evil becomes redefined. And that's what we're going to go into with, like, it's the basis of this discussion, because if you remember the last discussion, the word punishment became redefined to justify why God punishes, to say it's not unjust for him to punish. Now, evil has to be redefined to make sure that God is not a bad God. It's a good God that we're worshiping. So this idea of the non-existence of evil, I'm sure you guys have come across it, but one of its main origins is Plato. And the philosophers took a lot of his ideas when it came to this concept, and then it became intertwined and molded into the Islamic philosophy. So let's read from here. Plato's response, the non-existence of evil. Muhammad, would you like to read?
Plato's response, non-existence, non-being of evil. Plato says evil does not actually exist in the world at all. Evil is non-existence, Adam, and non-existence requires no cause. If there's no water in this cup, the absence of water is attributed to the absence of the cause of water. Suppose I ask my friend for water and he fills the cup. The cup of the water is my friend's existence and his real positive actions. If he did not fill it and the cup remained empty, then the absence of water needs no cause. Its cause is simply the absence of cause, the absence of my friend's action.
Yeah. So do you see where this is taking us towards? So they say evil doesn't actually exist. It's just the lack of something. So being ill doesn't really exist. It's the lack of health. Or like the classic example is darkness doesn't actually exist. It's just the lack of light. So the same with evil. Evil doesn't exist, but if someone lacks goodness, evil comes about. If someone lacks compassion, then evil comes about. If someone lacks this and that, that's the cause of this concept that we describe as evil. So let's keep going, Ali.
In short, the cause of non-being is non-being, and the cause of existence is existence. Therefore, all the evils, short for, what is it?
Shurur, yeah.
Shurur, that are forms of non-existence, and non-existence cannot be attributed to God. Plato points is captured in this verse. Hajjullah Hadi Sabzavari.
Sabzavari, you remember him, right? He's one of the famous philosophers.
Is that Arabic?
Hajjullah Hadi Sabzavari. Yeah, it's Arabic, yeah.
You might have to read it.
الشر أعدام وكم قد ضل من يقول باليزدان ثم أهرمن.
Evil is non-existent, and how many have gone astray by speaking of Yazdan and then
So who are they? Yazdan, Ahriman.
two gods or something.
Yeah. So this is like one of his direct negations of that dualistic discussion. That's why he brought it up, because it's like one of the focal points of the philosophers to rebut that, to get to this discussion. So Sharru A'damun. So when you say something is Adam, it means it doesn't have existence. It doesn't have wujud. That's what it's the opposite of wujud, Adam. So the reality of evil is Adam. That's the whole notion summed up. And the people like the Yazdan, they're correct on one side where they say there's the originator of goodness, but when they say there's the originator of evil, they've gone astray by saying that, because there is no evil. So in essence, evil is non-being. Evil is not a thing. Non-being requires no origin, only being requires an origin. So that solves that problem, that you have two originators, because evil doesn't need an originator, because it's not something that has origination. Okay.
Don't they just open up a can of worms? Because going back to the other topic of free will,
Mm. Yeah.
so you've claimed that everything happens in a sequence like a play.
Yeah.
So the lack of action comes back to God, isn't it? So you just contradicted yourself.
So the
You're
lack.
saying that the lack of the evil is the lack of something,
Yeah.
right? So the evil of the friend that didn't fill the cup of water is a lack of action. But in the previous class we discussed that all actions come from God.
Hmm.
So how you can't have the cake and eat it? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Am I
It's.
correct in saying?
Yeah, you're right. Look, you have a point, and I guess just like before in these discussions, we go through all these step by step. Because obviously when it comes to their theory, they'll go back and say, okay, here are the critiques, like they do in every discussion, and here's our responses to it, and then here's the counter response, here's the counter response. So this discussion of evil has that same pattern as well, where there's always objections to it, which have certain rebuttals that they provide. So we'll go through that, but let's understand it well first, so that we can really. You've got to put your head into that space and sort of convince yourself that what they're saying is right, to really digest it. Because like one thing I'd say is when you read it, when you understand what they're saying, it's actually not that easy to respond to it. It's a difficult subject to tackle. And the more you learn and understand it better, the harder it becomes to like answer. So there's a lot of good examples that I mentioned in the next few slides about this. So we'll read those.
In reality, evil is non-being, evil is not a real existence. Non-being requires no origin, whereas only existence requires an origin. Plato and his students have explained this point in one manner, and Allama Shirazi, the commentator of Hikmat al-Ishraq, has explained it in another, far more scholarly and reasoned manner. Plato says, consider an evil such as a murderer drawing a knife and plunging it into the heart of an innocent person or cutting his throat. What exactly in this act is evil?
All right, so this example is a good one, and we sometimes use a similar one when it comes to how the philosophers describe the action of killing Imam Hussein, alayhi salam, and like the justification for in justification for Shemra in a sense. So let's break up that example here. You want to read?
If the knife is sharp, is that bad? Not the perfection. The man of a knife is precisely that it is sharp. The muscles of the murderer's hands were unable to control and expand. Would that be good? Not the perfection of the hand is that its muscle move properly and its nerves are strong. Is the perfection of the flesh that a knife should not be able to penetrate it? Not that the perfection of the flesh is that the knife can enter it. Otherwise, it is not flesh, it will be iron or wood.
All right, and let's recap that. So Ali missed that part. So that example, a murderer taking a knife and plunging it into the heart of an innocent person, cutting his throat. So the question is like, what is the evil in this? So if you break up this whole scenario, the evil, I mean, the knife is supposed to cut. That's the purpose of a knife. The sharp blade of a knife is intended to penetrate into something that has tissue or something that is slightly soft. So for a knife to penetrate into flesh is perfection. It's actually a good thing. And it's something it's intended to do. So from the knife's perspective, there is no evil. When it comes to the person whose muscles are being penetrated by the knife, his muscles are supposed to have that quality. They're not supposed to be tough like wood and like steel. They're supposed to have that softness to them so that they can function properly. So the muscle in itself and that body has perfection in order to be able to absorb that penetration. So you've got the knife, which is perfect, the muscle and the body, which is perfect. The hand that is moving the knife and clenching onto it and moving it in that direction. Once again, that hand is designed to grasp, it's designed to clench, it's designed to move in different directions. So every aspect of that movement is perfection, once again. So that act, when it moves and goes and plunges into a person's heart, is an act of perfection. And then when you look at this holistically, let's go to the next slide. So the sharpness of the knife is a perfection and is good. It's a positive existence. Amr wujudi, the movement of the hands is perfection. The nature of the flesh being cuttable is a perfection. So all those are perfection. So what exactly is evil in the act of stabbing? Do you want to read that one? The evil
is the absence of this man's soul and the separation, that is, lack of connection of his tissues, which is non-being. Everything that is existence is good. The evil lies only in non-existence. This is Plato's position.
Okay, do you want to think about that for a sec?
Connection. Evil is the absence of this man's soul. Okay. And then I'm taking that to mean like some kind of moral judgment.
No, it's not about morality. So when the knife penetrates into the heart and causes this man to die, the evil is the fact. The evil comes from the fact that there is no longer a connection between the body and the soul. Yeah, so the absence of the connection between the soul and the body is what is evil. So that is a non-existence. So something that doesn't exist is the evil. So now life doesn't exist for that person. This is what you describe as evil.
Right.
That makes sense? Okay.
Yeah.
So everything that exists is good. So all those aspects that we talked about, they're all things that exist. You
Yeah.
can like identify them and see the cause. But the ones which do not exist, the life that doesn't exist, is now the evil aspect of it. Mm.
Okay.
All right, so keep going, please.
In every case where you use the term evil and say something is bad, they analyze it scientifically so that the badness returns to non-being, not to being. Everything in this world that is being, whose source is God. What is evil is non-being, and non-being requires no origin. The cause of non-being is simply the absence of the cause.
Yeah, so what would be the absence of the cause in that example?
Yeah, so whatever is holding the soul to the body.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, so the absence of life.
Yeah, so once that's yeah. And if you could say, well, when something penetrates your heart and I'll give you an example. If you have a balloon with air in it, and I pop the balloon,
Mm.
that was meant to happen. Like the air leaving the balloon is expected behavior.
It's perfection, yeah.
Yeah, that's the perfection of the balloon, right?
Yeah.
It contains the air to say to the body, that's its perfection. Once it's killed, the soul leaves it. That's its expected behavior. Anyway, that's just a refutation. But
It's well, I thought you're affirming it.
no, I was
It sounds like you're
refuting it.
It doesn't sound like it's refuting it. It's complimenting it.
Well, no,
Because you're saying that like someone might, oh, that's bad. Why did you pop it? You shouldn't have popped the balloon.
yeah, but what they're saying is the absence of or something that requires the absence of the cause. So life to death is the absence of life.
Yeah.
According to them. But they've just arbitrarily decided that death is like they've just decided things that have no cause and things that do have a cause. Like it actually doesn't make sense when you think about it. Because in the same way that you pop the balloon, the air leaves because air cannot be contained by a balloon. The balloon pops because its fabric is stretched and it contracts. Like all of that is just expected behavior.
So from the physical world, like let's say you say alam al-takwin, that is perfection, right? When the popping happens of the balloon.
Yeah.
And it's no longer encompassing that segregated air within it.
Yeah.
That's actually completely perfect conduct of the world.
Yeah, that's right.
So where's the evil in that?
There is no evil in it. So my point was, in the same way that if you kill a body, the soul leaves.
Yeah.
That's perfectly expected behavior. So the soul leaving really shouldn't be considered evil.
Well, that's exactly what they're saying.
I thought they were saying that the absence of the soul is evil.
We're saying the absence of the soul is a nothing.
It's not, doesn't exist. Yeah. That's why I'm saying you're sort of, you're affirming, you're complimenting it.
Can you go backwards?
Okay.
So they say the evil is the absence of this man's soul and the separation of his tissues, which is non-being.
Yeah, so the expected behavior is that when the heart no longer has a connection to the brain, whatever connection gets severed, expected behavior is that there's a lack of life.
Right.
That's how the world is supposed to be.
Yeah.
If it wasn't in that sense, there would be disorder. Like imagine you cut someone's head off and they're still alive.
Yeah.
You'd be like, what the hell is this world? It doesn't. they're supposed to not have existence, or they're supposed to not breathe once the connection is cut.
Yeah.
So it's looking at it from a physical perspective of the world, that it's all happening in perfection. And there's truth to it in a sense, because when we look at, remember how we discussed God's action and our action?
Mhm.
We say God's action is the alam of takwin, that he's set the rules, that this is how the world works, and it follows those rules. So from the perspective of God, that is perfection. That's like severing of the artery causing the death.
Right.
It's actually perfect. It's part of the perfect system, which it's supposed to execute in that way. Otherwise, it would be disorderly and imperfect. So they're just saying, yeah, it's all happening. It's happening as per the way the system is designed to happen. So the question is like, where's the evil in all this? So if you're supposed to not have life when the artery is severed, then where's the evil here? So they said the evil is the fact that there's no longer life. The lack of life is what you describe as evil. It's the absence of something. It's the Adam of something. So when something doesn't exist, you say that's evil, right?
Right.
It doesn't exist, you say it's evil, but because you're talking about something that doesn't exist being evil, that thing that doesn't exist can't possibly have a cause. So there is no cause to evil. Evil isn't a thing, it's the lack of existence, the lack of something.
Right.
So
Does that make sense?
there's a as a word that second positive is C.
So it's the lack of the
That's nothing evil in it.
no, so like you'd say when someone's sick, let's say they have cancer or something. What's supposed to happen is when that cancerous tumor inflicts the body, it's supposed to spread. It's supposed to eat up other organs. It's supposed to damage the body. That's how it's supposed to function. When it does its function, and then it causes your life to be severed, when your body ends up following the process and no longer being able to continue its survival, you say that the evil in this situation is the lack of the survival of that person, the lack of the person continuing to live, or the lack of the person breathing. So he's not breathing. Is not breathing an action? That's the question. Is breathing an action? Is not breathing an action?
No, it's not.
The lack of oxygen.
Well, it's a lack of something, but when you say not breathing, you're saying it doesn't exist. It's a negation of an action. It's a negation of an existence. Breathing is existence. Breathing is something that you can identify as an action. Not breathing is not an action. But in that case, that person not breathing leads to his death. The fact that he's not breathing is not something that exists. It's the lack of existence. The lack of existence can't have a cause, therefore evil doesn't have a cause. That's the logic. That's the theory behind it. So see if it says in every case where you use the term evil and say something is bad, they analyze it scientifically so that the badness returns to non-being, not to being. Everything in this world that is being, whose source is God. What is evil is non-being, and non-being requires no origin. The cause of non-being is simply the absence of the cause. You just got to understand that. I mean, obviously there's ways to address it, but the logic behind it we need to grasp. Does that make sense?
It's kind of, to some extent, it's correct. that we would say that a lot of these things are reaction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there's no evil in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's action,
Yeah.
but they're missing like I think like, one big thing, which is the action of the person
Yeah.
is setting all this in motion.
Yeah, see, that's right. And the thing is, the thing that's making it hard for us to just say, okay, because in the previous discussions, we drilled this point that your actions are actually real and your thoughts are real and they're not just arbitrary things. Like if you remember, the philosophers would say your action, the physical things are only counted as action, not things that are in your mind. So we have that mindset already set where we can differentiate between an action and the physical and understand that even if something isn't physical, it's still an action. But they've created this mindset where they're purely looking at everything on a physical level. So when you look at it from a physical, anatomical level, then the action has no relevance in it. Your verb, your decision to do something is not something that's a factor in here. It's just the fact that you did it and it was an action that followed the right course physically. That's what they only look at. They isolated it to that. That's why it says here, analyze it scientifically, like the way the atheist would analyze it. They just look at it like physical, chemicals, object. Like something when you talk about morality or spirituality or soul, the atheist would say like it's just made up. They just want to look at it scientifically and physically. So the philosophers went down the path of making everything scientific and physical, which obviously is going to lead to a lot of problems. All right.